So we can do examples where we have equilibrium and then we say this happens in the market. Let's use our supply and demand model to predict what we would expect to happen to equilibrium price and quantity. So we can say what would happen if demand went up, or what would happen if demand decreased, what would happen if supply increased, what would happen if supply decreased. We can talk about all those things. Or we can sort of use our picture and it can tell us if we see something happen, we can sort of backwards induce to think about what must have happened in the market to cause that. So let's say, for instance, we're in the market for avocados and we notice higher prices and lower quantity being sold. So we're like, prices are higher and quantities lower. What must have happened? A lot of things could have happened, but there's one thing that we know for sure must have happened to have an equilibrium with higher prices and lower quantity. If you think about it, we're at P0 and Q0. What we're saying is prices have gone up and quantity, here's the origin, quantity increases as you move out along the axis. Prices we're seeing higher, quantity we're seeing lower. If prices are higher, if our new equilibrium is going to be in a place where prices are higher and quantities lower, that can only happen one way. We can only have an intersection of supply and demand with a higher price and a lower Q if this supply curve shifts in. A shift into the demand curve would have made price lower. A shift out of the supply curve would have made price lower. A shift out of the demand curve would have made Q higher. There's only one thing that could lead to simultaneously higher prices and lower quantity, and that would be a decrease in supply. Shifting in. That would result in a new equilibrium at a higher price and a lower quantity. No other shift would result in both a higher price and a lower quantity. Something else might be happening also, we don't know. The things could all happen at the same time. But we do know if we are observing simultaneously higher prices and lower quantity in a market, it has to be the case that supply is decreased. And then we can talk about what might cause a decrease in the supply of avocados. It might be more expensive to hire workers to harvest the avocados. Or it might be that the demand for some other product has gone up so much, some other thing that you grow. And so people that were making avocados, growing avocados, decided to grow something else. It may be that gas costs have gone up so much that transporting avocados is just a lot more expensive than it used to be. Anything that has changed, increased the cost of producing avocados, or it may be that there was a big natural disaster in the avocado. I should have picked something that I know more about. I don't even know where avocados are grown. I know we get a lot of avocados from Mexico, I think. Yeah, but some big natural disaster in a place where a lot of avocados are grown is going to, anything like that, anything that decreases supply. So it's just another way of sort of using the supply and demand diagram, not just saying this happened, what do we expect to happen to price and quantity, but saying we saw this happen, what must have changed in the market, and what could explain that change in the market. And so we can use the supply and demand model that way. Let's do another one real quick. Let's say we observe, to give you a chance to think about this yourself. Let's say we observe higher prices and higher quantity. What must have changed? There's always one thing that must have happened. There's only one way we can see simultaneously higher prices, so price has gone up, simultaneously higher prices and higher quantity. How could we see from this point price higher and quantity higher? The only way that could happen is if demand shifted out. An increase in demand. That drives up price, people want to buy more, and more is sold. Even though the price is higher, more is sold. Not a violation of the law of demand because all else is not constant, right? The law of demand says price and quantity demanded are inversely related, holding all else constant. That gives us a downward sloping demand curve. In this case, all else is not constant. Something else has changed. So, you know, if this were the market for, I don't know, the market for, I always default to cars, let's say air travel, and maybe COVID has stopped, and so people are more willing to travel than they were before, or cars get more dangerous. I'm just trying to think. Incomes go up, so people have more money, so they want to travel more. Anything, if we see a higher price and a higher quantity in a market, it has to be the case that something has happened to shift demand. And then we can think about all of our demand shifters and what happened to shift demand. So again, we can use our supply and demand diagrams to say, if this happens, what do we expect to happen to price or quantity? But we can also say, if we see this, and then we can sort of backwards induce, and if we see this, what does that tell us about what must have happened in the market? What curve must have shifted in what direction, and what can we say about what might have caused that? And so we can use our models to do that also.